Now, I understand that many in this room may not use herbs, and that many people watching this online or in the future um, do not use herbs. But please hear these words and trust me. Herbs are not intimidating to use or learn. When it comes to herbs, all we really need to do is understand flavor and nature. What it does to the chi of a person, that flavor and that nature, how it does it, and why is what classical herbalism is about. Classical herbalism is not about memorizing formulas from a classic book or memorizing single herbs and when to use them. It's about knowing that a flavor and a nature does something to our chi. And once I figure out what their chi needs, I just pick the flavor and the nature they need, right? So realize that herbs are chosen for a formula and they're not chosen because the herb treats the condition. That's not the herb for cough. Oh, they've got a cough, and I look, and there's 20 herbs in the cough section of the book. Which one do I pick? Oh, well, I don't know. Right? It treats cough. Which cough? Well, oh, damn cough. Oh, what? Huh? No. The person who wrote the formula or chose the herb in the classic book needed a certain flavor and a nature to make the chi do something, go down, spread out, go up, right? And then they picked an herb that they had on hand, right? I'm from Anhui, this grows there. I'm from Neimungu, that grows there, right? It's not that that herb does something. You don't need that herb. You need a flavor and nature. And then you find the closest that you can get. Some herbs, of course, were so reliable and useful that everybody kept them on hand, right? There was a lot of it. Some of them everybody used, and you'd think it's the herb to treat that illness because it grows absolutely everywhere, like dandelions. Great herb. Is dandelion really a great herb, or is it just really easy to get, and it's pretty fresh, it's pretty strong? Like, who came first? I don't know, but it's great, right? Other herbs were simply chosen or picked because that's what grew in that region or at that time of year. The person got sick and the famous doctor wrote a formula and someone said, "What a great formula." And it was the middle of winter. So all they had were dried roots. All the leaves were used up or no longer strong. So they had to pick roots. And the next thing you know, everyone thinks it's these 5 roots are going to make a difference for this disease. No, it's just the flavor and nature. And that's what was available. And then it went in a book. And then we somehow think it's that herb. They weren't thinking the herb. They were thinking flavor and nature. The next thing that we got to grasp, and it's unfair maybe, but it is what it is, so let's just accept this. The best writings on yin and yang in the clinic, how and why qi and blood cause illness and can be rectified into balance to cure illness, and basically the very best explanations of Chinese medical theory were written by people who were herbalists. Please understand those herbalists were also acupuncturists, right? They did whatever it took, most likely. But buried within herbal books and herbal knowledge are the very best writings of our medicine. And a lot of it is because they're ticked off at someone who wrote a book and said something. And so they're like, Chiyotsuli, how is that possible that this person said this treats cough? When, of course, if we look at the flavor and nature, dong, 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 dong. And you get like, oh, I never thought of it. Oh. And if we access herbal writings, please, today in the West, everyone's like, oh, you buy an herbal book because you think it contains formulas. The formulas are the least interesting part of every herbal book. But it's terrible. You buy these compendiums, formulas and strategies. Like, I don't give a crap about the formulas. I want to hear what those doctors were saying because they're going to say something that just makes me go, oh my goodness, that's so obvious, right? Okay, so important. So The truth is, we must study herbs correctly, even if we do not use herbs, so we can put their words when we read them into context, right? Now, if most people in this room have been with me for a while, if you come across a writing and someone is like, Lego, needle perpendicularly. Ah, what nonsense. That is oblique to cause the something or other. And someone comes along and says, but something. You'd be like, yeah, I get that. I can get the conversation that's happening here because with Andrew, we figured out like, oh, more room, less room. It's closer to the ankle. It's other side of the ankle. It's in the toe. It's in the hand. Like you can have a conversation now. Please, especially for those of you who've been around a while. Take the Manual of Acupuncture by Dedman et al. Right? Is that the one that most of you use? Right? Look when it's an illness like, oh, treat gallbladder, right? Have fun. Open up the book and then look at the points that they chose. Like, here's your classic combinations. And then ask yourself, do you really think it's going to do it now after all this time we spent together? All right? Really? You really think that's reliable? It is going to work some of the time. But remember, we're trying to get to a lot of the time. But now look at those points and be like, oh, I'll bet you they were draining here, warming there, cooling that. Oh, and then suddenly it's so helpful to have those points only if we know what we're going to do with them. That's the hard part, not the actual points. But once we understand the language, it's so helpful. Once we understand the language of herbs, then the conversations they're having are so helpful to being clear to what we have to do, no matter what we choose to do, right? It's about accessing clarity. We want to study herbs the right way. That's important. And I try not to throw people under the bus, as we say in English, or speak badly. I do ask questions like, do you really think that's going to work? Without being too specific, because it gets pretty obvious. But please, if you haven't studied herbs, don't study the way they were taught in schools or in the training programs available to people today. Because the truth is, we only really need to know and use 30 or 40 herbs well. That's it. That's all we really need. And perhaps we need to be comfortable with writing 60 herbs total. The number of times you will write Haijin Sha in a formula or Jinchen Sao are few, but you need to know they're really helpful when there's stones or sludge in the gallbladder, the bladder, or the kidneys. Now, you could learn to use them in a lot of different ways, but there'll be a group of herbs that are on your shelf for specific application. And then there'll be the herbs that you use for their flavor and nature that you're clear about. But we don't need to sit and memorize 300 herbs to take a test when by the time a month goes by, nobody remembers even what category they're in, right? Or what their flavor and nature is in because that's not even pushed in the schools and the programs. When we see herbs as vehicles for affecting the chi in the person, the way I stress affecting chi in the person with our physical treatments, it's the same thing. We then can become familiar friends as we taste them and we use these 30 or 40 herbs and they become extensions of our treatment. And here's the good news, folks. How many of us, like we were having a conversation at lunch, this Parkinson's patient, and the dramatic results they got, but what would happen if we could treat them every day? What would happen if we could treat that person every day, twice a day correctly? Right? That's what herbs allow us to do. It allows us to go home with our patient and treat them every day, 2 or 3 times a day, depending on what's going on. Who wouldn't want to do that for their patients? It's worth my extra time to learn how to do it and go. I know it's a pain in Europe for herbs because of the licensing. And then like, if you're a doctor, you can't prescribe. I mean, I get it. I get it. It's hard, but there's a lot of sick people out there who need us, right? So if I can go home with them and treat them every day, I would, but I don't want to. I got to sleep, right? But if I can give them herbs done correctly, that I'm with them twice a day, every day, And I did the formula correctly because I understand flavor and nature moving qi. And if they come in no different or worse, I know what I do. Right? I put a needle in someone, they get a headache. I know how to undo that, and I know why they got the headache because I was clear on what I was doing. Please understand that. Now, if you've already studied herbs the complicated way, right, which is just never mind, and so you gave up, or maybe your use is stagnated. You have like your 10 formulas, or everybody gets Xiao Yao San, or everybody gets the Jin Tang, or because of this, you got really frustrated and you took like the master class on Chai Hu. So everybody gets a Chai Hu, Xiao Chai Hu variation, whatever it is. If you've atrophied or given up, or if you've never learned herbs to use them, please start again to use herbs from the Neijing way and the Shennong way. There's only, correct me if I'm wrong, only one or maybe two, I can never remember. It's one formula in the Neijing. That's it, right? Liu Yisan. 还有一没有不知道. Oh, two formulas, right? That's it. The entire Neijing, two formulas. The entire Neijing teaches us how to write herbs. But particularly, it told us the flavor and nature of what's going to happen with every herb that's taken. Bitter, hot, cold, etc. So we want the Neijing way, which is not, here's a million herbs and a million formulas, memorize them. No, that's not what the Neijing taught. The Neijing taught clarity on what it does. And then we need to learn herbs the Shennong way, which is taste them. There's a reason why I push so much practical for you on the table. You got to know what it's like, done right, done wrong, right? You got to taste those herbs, right? Julianne will not write herself a formula because she's tasted every herb. She's going to pick the nice tasting ones, even if they aren't going to work. She's like, oh, I don't want to taste that one. No. So like, she has to get someone else to write the formula, and she's like, oh, they're our friends, right? Shennong herbs, taste them, know them, right? Okay. Please do not learn the academically dead way of memorization, or what's unfortunately also happened is the classically rigid way. This for this for that, this book only, don't use anything else. Start by studying herbs for health, not for illness, right? Start by understanding, lightening the body and being helpful. Start there, right? Don't start with like, I'm going to take acute gallbladder something or other, or like cancer of the something. Here's my formula. Start with wellness. If you really want to get under the hood after that, we're going to be spending 2 years here, starting next March. Julianne will be here 4 times in 2022. I'll be here 2 times. It's 6 modules, 2 years, hundreds and hundreds of online hours, 6 modules, 3 days each of tasting herbs, getting to know things, Zoom meetings in between. We are sick and tired of people practicing either bad herbalism or not understanding that it really is simple. 医学实在义. Chen Shuyan said it best. The study of medicine is actually really easy. So we've committed ourselves to move, and everything I've been doing for acupuncture and touch and trying to clarify this, we're doing it for herbs, right? So whether you do the herbs or not, we need to access this language, because this is the language that allowed me to get what's going on. This is the language of the Neijing. This is the language of our medicine, and the more we know, the smarter, wiser we're going to be. And I want to stress the point of classical medicine before we move on is it's not who's the smartest. In fact, I've become like Dr. Xie. I fear the smart people. I search for and I pray for the ones with common sense. Because it is common sense that define this medicine, not esoteric philosophies. It really is simple. but you've got to see it simply.